just started family literacy in October. Prior to that, I was just teaching for our basic ESL, adult education, and then I also taught some academic ESL classes at FCC. I started my career in Honduras, and I had a flip phone at the time. So when I got to the States and I went through my master's program and everything, I still came to the classroom really not feeling super comfortable with technology, and definitely not knowing how to manage the fact that everybody had smartphones, and people were using translators sometimes, and then other people just didn't even know hardly how to use their smartphones at all. So I saw a big need there to start incorporating smartphones into what I was doing, and that's kind of how I came up with these ideas for different activities. So I would like to hear from you guys why you think it's important to incorporate smartphones in adult education, and particularly in ESL. So if you can just open up the chat box and type your responses, I'm gonna just give you a minute to respond to that. Why is it important for you to start using smartphones? Okay, great. Thank you guys so much for responding. So we're seeing making them more comfortable accessing information. They have phones anyway. Spruce up class activities. Yes. Why not use them? That's great. Builds digital literacy skills. Yes, I'm glad someone brought up digital literacy. I think a lot of us think that we have to reserve time in a computer lab in order to incorporate digital literacy, and I'm hoping that this presentation will change your mind about that if that's how you feel. Yes, so these are all great answers, and I think we're on the same page, and there are so many reasons, right? So we want them to be able to access all the information that's out there through their smartphones. We want them to feel comfortable with them. We want them to be able to use them as a tool, and we want to incorporate digital literacy. Yes, those are all totally valid reasons. So some of the statistics, some of the research on why we should be taking more advantage of smartphones in our classes. In the first section, I'm talking about adults in general. So 37% of US adults access the internet on their phone. So it's a good chunk of US adults. 58%, more than half, ages 18 to 29, mostly use their phone to go online. And 1 in 4 adults don't have broadband because half of them say because they have smartphones to access broadband. In the second part where you see demographics, all of these statistics change dramatically when we're talking about people who are low income and low education. And that's to say that they tend to use their smartphones more in place of broadband because it's more economical, and because they have to have phones anyway. They often can't purchase computers and laptops. So if you're teaching in adult education, that's who you're teaching, and smartphones is what they are increasingly relying on to access the internet and to do all sorts of things. So I think it's really important that we address that need. So I recently hosted a Twitter chat, and the topic was digital literacy. So I was able to put the question out there to teachers: what do you want when you're incorporating digital literacy? What are you looking for when you are considering different tools and technology to incorporate? And the number one answer I got emphatically was that we all want it to be simple. No logins, no downloads, no complications. Most of us want no passwords, no nothing. Just very simple, as easy to use as possible. That was what I heard most of. And then also, of course, we want it to be useful. We want something that's going to increase learning opportunities, generate authentic interactions, and provide us an opportunity to give our students feedback. And then in the classroom, what I've found is that students really want the same things. They want it to be simple. They don't want to leave class with a headache. They don't want to be clueless when they leave class about what did I just do and what did I just learn. And they also want it to be useful. They want to leave class feeling like, wow, I can really use this tool now on my own. I don't need somebody to walk me through every step of the way. So we're going to play a little game. Everyone, I know I can't see you. I can't see your hands. I don't really know if you're playing, but I hope you are. Put your hand up. We're going to play Never Have I Ever. So you're going to put a finger down for each of these things that you have done. If you are an ESL teacher and you have printed a calendar to use in class, put a finger down. So that's to say maybe you printed a fake calendar and you were talking about days of the week or something like that. Put a finger down. If you have done a role play that incorporates the weather in some way, maybe you were talking about it's raining outside, what are you going to wear, something like that, put a finger down. If you have ever printed or used a fake map in class, so maybe it's one of those road maps where the library is across the street from the grocery store, something like that. If you have ever used one of those, put a finger down. If you have ever been unsure whether your students actually practice their speaking skills outside of class, put a finger down. So if you've ever questioned, do they actually talk in English outside of class? Put your finger down. And finally, if you used tape recorders or anything to record their speaking, put your finger down. Okay, so let me know, how many fingers do you still have up? Let me know in the chat box. Okay, Jill only has one. Dana has four, okay. 2, 0 from William, okay. All right, cool. So we see these are really pretty common activities that we use in the class, in an ESL class. There are, of course, different varieties that different people might use, but all of these can be done with a smartphone. So instead of printing and instead of creating these inauthentic materials, we can actually use smartphones to make these more authentic and more interactive and even more fun. Now, I think people get worried when I start talking about using smartphones because we're thinking about passwords, we're thinking about downloads. One big issue is downloads. They have to know their iCloud information if they have iPhones, and they have to know how to get to the App Store, and sometimes they don't have enough space on their phone. So I have made it very simple and useful to incorporate smartphones by just using these everyday apps. Now, if you don't recognize one of these, please let me know in the chat box. Do we recognize all of these apps? I think so. So we've got a calendar app, camera, maps, texting app, and the weather app. These are apps that come preloaded on phones, so we don't have to do any downloads. We don't have to use passwords to get in them. We don't need the internet to use them. So I want you guys to just take a minute, look at these everyday apps that we're all very familiar with, and brainstorm for a minute and just see if you could think of a way that you would create an English language learning activity from one of these everyday apps. And type it in the chat box. The cloud icon. Okay, I think you're talking about the weather app, Jill. The cloud with the sun. That's the weather app, so it'll look different depending on your phone and stuff, but no problem. So let me know, just take a little minute, think about these. What could we do? Okay, Dana says we could do a comparison activity on the weather, comparing weather here and weather in their native country. Love it. Ask what will be the weather tomorrow. Yes, Gail, great. Use camera function selfie mode to see how their mouth changes when they make vowel sounds. That's awesome. Daily planning and time management on calendar app. Yes. Reading directions on the map app. Yes. Use the maps to find a way from one place to the next. What is the date? In 2 weeks on Wednesday. Yes, very good. Draw out that vocabulary. And okay, these are great ideas. So as you will see in my presentation, I don't ever claim to have any groundbreaking ideas here. All I claim to have done is taken the time to think about activities that we do in an ESL class and how we can incorporate our smartphones with those activities. Okay, so you guys, even just in 1 minute of brainstorming, have come up with some of the same ideas that I'm going to share here. And I hope that you'll see that I have more too. Okay, so let's start with the calendar app. We have Deborah and Gail both gave great ideas for the calendar app. So what I do with the calendar app, at a more basic level, we do a calendar hunt. So like Gail said, I ask questions like, what day is it on March 21st? To elicit the days of the week. What's the date next Tuesday? To elicit maybe the months or the ordinal numbers. What day is Christmas this year? So not only are we eliciting that target language, but they are also getting used to scrolling through their app. I had one student who did not realize that the little abbreviations at the top of the calendar, the SMT, were actually abbreviations for the days of the week. So it helped him to practice just knowing, oh, okay, there's that first letter. Now I kind of have a hint as to what the response is. And then my second idea is to do a role play for making plans. And you can tailor this to your group. For example, in family literacy, I teach all moms. So I like to do it with a play date. But you know, if you have a group of mixed ages and mixed everything, you could do a doctor's appointment or an interview. And you can give the students a framework for the conversation, or you can just let it flow. The great thing about this is that all of the details that we want them to think about are already in the app. So we don't really need to create this whole handout and all of the scaffolding because it's already in the app. They're gonna have to decide on a time. They're gonna have to decide on a place and all of these things. So that's gonna help guide them with what language they need in order to make the plans. Next up, we have the Maps app. And I'm sorry if you heard that, that was the intercom. I'm still at the school. With the Map app, I love to do a scavenger hunt. Again, I do this with more of my beginner group. Where's the local library? Where is the police station? And then sometimes I'll get really specific in the area around the school and say, what is across from the McDonald's? So we're using the prepositions, we're using the names of different places, but they're actually looking at a map of somewhere where they live. And not only that, but they're learning a lot of the functions of the Map app. I had a lot of students who didn't know that you could search library near McDonald's and actually see what library was closest to the McDonald's. for example. So we have the language part, we're eliciting the language, but we also have the digital literacy part where they're getting more used to navigating the applications on their smartphones. I also have a task-based activity that I use, and this is probably for a more advanced group, where they have to plan an unplugged road trip to Yellowstone National Park. Of course, Yellowstone because it's across the country, and they would have to really think about a lot of details. So it's unplugged, so they have to imagine they're not going to take their phones with them, and they have to pre-plan everything. So they'll use their Maps app to see, okay, if we want to stop every 4 hours, we need to find gas stations or restaurants that are going to be 4 hours from the previous destination. If we want to stay overnight, then we need to find hotels along the way. Where are we going to get gas, and those kinds of details. Next up is the texting app. With the texting app, I like to use the microphone function for pronunciation practice. So this is really great, I've noticed, for practicing minimal pairs and consonant sounds, and also stress. So the first thing that I do is provide students with the language that includes the target pronunciation elements, okay, so whether you're focusing on consonants or stress, and then have them dictate the language into their messaging app using the microphone function. So one big, something we probably all can relate to here is Tuesday versus Thursday. If you mispronounce those in the microphone app, and I'm sorry, in the microphone on the texting app, they will come out incorrectly. And so it actually helps students to see in real time, okay, what are people hearing when I say Tuesday versus Thursday? And then you can have them send you or just show you the results. So that's another opportunity to give them feedback. They can send it to you, or if you can just see it there, then you can help them through, okay, well, it thinks you're saying Tuesday because you're not pronouncing the Thursday, the different vowel sound there. Or yeah, that's just an example. So yeah, you can give them feedback in the moment, or you can have them send you the results if this is something that they're practicing at home. And then also you can have them practice recording a message and sending. So this is a little bit more of a digital literacy piece that might help them in their everyday lives if they are able to know how to use the recording function and send a text rather than always typing it out and using the microphone. So the recording function, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but you can just press and hold the microphone and record your voice. And in that way, they can send to you any speaking practice that they're doing, or they can just use it themselves to hear it back. Next up, we have the weather app. And I think someone mentioned, oh, sorry, I pressed on the image. That happened to me last time. Okay, everybody can see the presentation still. If you can't, just let me know in the chat box. Someone had mentioned with the weather app, what will the weather be tomorrow? So I actually use the weather app every morning that we have class. I ask them what the weather is, and I ask them what the high and the low of the day is, and I just use it as kind of a daily warm-up, a daily routine that we have, and helps them also practice the vocabulary about, you know, rainy or cloudy, etc. Something a little more complicated is to have them create a shopping list for a trip to London and Brazil next week. Now, why London and Brazil? Because they're on, you know, in two very different places with two very different weather patterns. So their shopping list should look very different, and it's a good way to get them practicing, you know, the vocabulary that you might need to travel. So different clothing items and things like that. So I have them look at the weather in those two places on the weather app, and then think through, okay, well, what will we need if this is what the week is looking like? Next, I have the phone call app. is one we should all definitely be very familiar with. I don't know how many of you here are bilingual, but I also speak Spanish. I learned it when I was in Honduras. And one thing, I was a Spanish interpreter for the Carroll County Public Schools, and I just found it so painful anytime that I had to make a phone call. I was fine going in and doing the parent-teacher conferences and stuff, but when I had to make a phone call, it just really made me so nervous. And so when I was thinking about that with my students, I thought maybe it would be better if they could actually make phone calls in class in a safer space where the language is fresh, so that they don't have that same painful anxiety out in the real world when they have to make a phone call in their second language. So I've used a pair research project, and I will have them leave class first and then they get the assignment. So it may be something like where I'm asking them to research a different topic, but each partner has to look for different information, and then they have to call one another and share the information. Another thing I do is partner interviews, which is a little bit easier. It takes probably less scaffolding on your part, where they leave class and they get a list of questions and they have to call one of their partners from class and answer the questions to bring in as homework. The benefits of this, like I talked about, it reduces, phone anxiety in your second language. It's also an opportunity for peer feedback, focused on communicative goals. So whether or not they're actually reaching their communicative goals instead of, the feedback we might want to give on little grammar pieces and things like that. I found one of the most useful things that they hear on these phone calls is, huh? Or what? Or it can be really helpful, I think, to them to know whether or not they're actually being understood. And so it gives that opportunity for them to give feedback to one another in a safe space. Some disclaimers on using this phone call app. I think it's important to always provide an alternative in case you have students who are not comfortable doing this, and be sensitive to cultural complications. So I would never pair a woman and a man together. I would never want anyone to go home and be making a phone call to the opposite sex, just to be sensitive to any different cultures and belief systems that may be in place at their house. So I just want to put out that disclaimer to be careful about that and be sensitive to it. And be careful about privacy concerns if someone doesn't want to share their phone number. There are other apps where they wouldn't have to share their phone number, and you could always provide an alternative way for them to get the information to each other, maybe through an email address or something like that. But if anyone is concerned about their privacy, of course, these are their personal devices, and I think it applies to all of these activities. We have to really respect that they are personal and private devices, so we don't ever want to force someone to do something on their personal device that they don't want to do. And then the last one, administer the assignment outside of class for authentic responses. So I've had the problem where I give the partner interview questions in class, and then I have two students who, get together and are filling out each other's answers right after class. So you want to make sure they're all at home before they get these questions, so they don't have the chance to skip out on the important part, which is the actual conversation. Finally, I have the spinning camera. My favorite thing to use is the camera app. And we do video journals with these. They're so free form. They're so adaptable. So with my beginner students, I might have them create a video where they go home, go to their kitchen, and name the items in their kitchen: stove, microwave, things like that. Or it might be more advanced where I'm having them interview a friend, or practice some kind of more advanced grammar concept. But the point is that it's super adaptable to any language objective at any level. It also gives the opportunity to assess speaking outside of the classroom and give more individualized feedback. When I had students doing this one time, I just remember, you know, there was one student whose grammar was not great, and then there was another student whose pronunciation was not great, and I just had the chance to really isolate those problems and give them feedback directly applying to whatever problems they were having. So it also is just very easy for them to use. It's easy for them to open the camera app. Everybody knows exactly where the camera app is. They don't need internet. They've used it probably a million times before this. So really easy. It's fun and creative. I have had students who make it very simple and they have 30-second videos. I have had students who come with 5-minute videos that they've edited and added little slides and images to. So it gives them a chance to really express themselves. And one thing I love about these video journals is that they're really flexible for a busy teaching schedule, which I'm sure we all have. So I remember a few times that I was watching the videos on the couch with my son at the end of the night, or I've watched them brushing my teeth. It's just something that, you know, I can kind of be tapped into what my students are doing while they're outside of the class and while I'm outside of the class and outside of work. And maybe you don't want that, but I found it to be convenient. And some lessons learned when I've done this is to be flexible with the length, the assignment, and your assessment. So just be really flexible because, like I said, people have different interpretations of how they want to do it. And I think the more flexible you are, the more authentic of a reaction you get from them, and the more they're able to have autonomy in their learning process. And then also offer alternatives for people who are camera shy or private. I just had one lady who just absolutely did not want to be in front of a camera. And she definitely did not want it facing her. And so I encouraged her to just let it face out and just talk into it. She was not comfortable with that. And so then I had her just record her voice, and she was more comfortable with that. I had one lady just end up texting me everything. So, you know, that's okay. If certain people are not comfortable with it, just give them alternatives, other ways that they can get that same practice and get the results to you. So I just want to show you guys 2 examples of video journals. These were in the same class, and I just like these 2 examples because in one, you'll see the student interviewing her coworker, which was not part of the assignment. It was just some questions that they were free to answer on their own, but she decided to actually interview someone at work, which I thought was really neat. And the second one, these images that you're seeing, my student actually took them out of the book and managed to put them in her video while she was practicing. So it's just an example of how she applied her own creativity to it. So I'm just gonna play a short piece of each one just so you can kind of see how they can make it their own. Oh my goodness, I thought I was going to, but it left me. All right, there we go.
Hi, Teresa. How are you doing?
Oh, fine. How are you today?
I am good.
Great. Much cooler out today than it was.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay. How can you handle when you was stressed?
When I feel stress?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I regularly exercise every day at the gym, and I find that I take yoga classes, and the exercises that I do in my yoga class and the breathing. We have a lot of breathing exercises we do at the beginning of the class to relax your body and to get you ready for the positions that you're going to do.
That helps you?
That helps me a lot.
Oh.
You control your breathing. It gets your whole body to relax so that you're able to do the positions. Your muscles won't be all tense.
Oh.
And you relax and you're able to do the positions. I also walk on the treadmill and some of the other machines at the gym. I find
Okay, so that was an example of Talian, who ended up interviewing her coworker, and the assignment was for her to just talk about how she handles stress, but she turned it into an interview, which I thought was even better. So that's just an example of kind of being flexible with the assignment, and students will come up with stuff that's really neat and unexpected. Here's my other example.
Nikolai shouldn't have overslept. He should have gotten up on time. Nikolai shouldn't have forgotten his briefcase. He should have carried his briefcase. Nikolai shouldn't have arrived late. He should have arrived early.
Okay, so then in that second example, you kind of see how she used the images from the textbook. It was the Ventures textbook, and she edited this cool video comparing what Nikolai should and shouldn't have done. And so again, that was just a little different creative approach that I thought was so neat. Another thing I want to highlight here is that you'll see that in the first video, the objective was more just, it was more topical, and in the second video is more focused on grammar. So that's another example of just how flexible these are. And my feedback was very different. In the first video, I isolated some of the idioms and phrases that Talian's coworker was using and asked her to think about the context and what did those phrases or idioms mean. Sorry, excuse me. And then in the second one, I talked to Marcella a little bit more about her pronunciation. So again, that's just an example of how everything from the assignment to the execution to the feedback can be so different and flexible, and it really generates something very authentic. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Excuse me. Okay, my last suggestion, if you're not already using it, is that you guys incorporate Google Classroom. I know some people already have a learning management system that they use, so maybe use Blackboard or Canvas. But if you don't have that available to you, Google Classroom is an amazing alternative, and it works great with all of these activities because like for example, the video journals, students can upload those directly onto the Google Classroom feed so that they can watch each other's videos, or they can upload it to the classwork, or different things like that. So it's really smartphone friendly. There's an app, and if you're looking to incorporate smartphones more, I highly recommend using Google Classroom. It's also super user friendly and easy to use. You can use the feed, which really mimics a social media interface where people are kind of posting statuses and pictures and stuff like that, and it all just goes on one page in chronological order. Or you can use there are different tabs, like a classwork tab, where they can submit Google Docs and Google Sheets and things like that if you have, if you want to make it a little more structured. And the only requirement for this is a Gmail account, which I find the majority of my students have, and if they don't have it, we start it together and they get excited about that because everybody's on Gmail and using Google now. So I highly recommend Google Classroom if you don't have an LMS that you're already using, and if you're looking to incorporate a little bit more technology. A couple of my success stories I had, and it actually was the first class that I used video journals in. One of my students came to class with her video journal and it was pitch black, but I could hear her, practicing. And then I started hearing a little bit of a whimpering and crying, and I asked her what she was doing at the time, and she said she was actually nursing her baby. So that to me was a testimony to the fact that she may not have other opportunities. She may not have American or English speaking friends. She may not feel comfortable talking to the clerk at the grocery store and things like that, but this gave her an opportunity to practice her English at home in a way that she was comfortable and in a way that she still had time to take care of her family and things like that. So I love that story, and I think it's an amazing testimony to the fact that these video journals really provide them with opportunities that they may not otherwise have. And then I had one student who was a digital immigrant. He was an older man who had no clue how to open and use his calendar app. And then once he figured it out, he was just amazed. He had a really busy schedule. He would work nights and come to class during the day. And he had a lot of family members to take care of and stuff. And he was just thrilled to have a place to be able to put all of his appointments and his work schedule and all of that and have it handy for him. And then I had a young academic, a young lady who was going into academic ESL. She was in the class that she needed just before she was going to transition. And she was able to combine her English practice with something that she was really passionate about, which was digital design. And she just made the most amazing video journals. At the end of the class, she made this big like farewell video for everyone. And so I thought it was really cool that we were able to bring her personal passions into our English learning experience. She was excited about it, and I was definitely excited about it. So thank you guys so much. That is everything that I have. Thank you for attending, and I hope it was useful to you. I would love to take this time to just chat about other tools that you guys might be using and any questions that you have about the presentation. So if anybody has some tools that this reminded you about that you would like to share about, please put them into the chat box so that we can see them and take advantage of them. And if you have any questions at all, please put them in the chat box as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, everyone is encouraged. If you have any questions, please type it in the chat box. I've also entered a link for you to complete the survey.
Okay, Jill has a great question that I get a lot. Have I had issues with some people using iPhones and some people using Androids? Jill, fortunately with these everyday apps, I find that they're very similar across the two different devices. I have had issues with iPhones versus Android, but only when I'm trying to use like an app that needs to be downloaded. So fortunately, I think with these apps, that's not a big issue. And that's why I really like to use the simple apps that come preloaded. Yes, LMS is a learning management system like Blackboard or Canvas or Google Classroom is an LMS as well. Best way to get everyone on the same site via Google. No matter how I try to get everyone on an actual web page, they don't seem to land in the same place. Okay, I see. So are you saying, Andy, that you guys are searching something on Google and they end up getting different websites suggested to them? Okay, I find the best way, well, first, one way you might want to try is to use a URL. Give them the exact URL that you're trying to get them to. If you're wanting them to practice using Google and searching things on Google, you might want to talk to them about search terms and talk to them about how to choose which website most clearly aligns with your purposes. Another option would be to provide the link, like if you have learning management software, or even if you just have their phone numbers, you could provide them with the link to the website that you want them to have just by texting it to them, or like posting it on Google Classroom or posting it on Blackboard. Does that answer your question, Andy? Okay, Dana, thank you so much for sharing. Dana uses Quizlet. Yes, Quizlet is awesome. They have so many different functions too, which I love. They have like the flashcards and the quizzes and different things like that. So I think it's really fun for students. And using Quizlet Live helps build soft skills. Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, Dana says that using Quizlet Live helps to build soft skills because they're put into groups in which only one person has the correct word for the definition displayed on everyone's screens. That's great, Dana. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, anyone else who has tools like that, that's awesome. I want everyone to get on. Huh, that's strange, Andy. Are they all searching with the same terms? Like searching the exact same words or no? You might want to give them the exact words to search and then make sure that they all click on the first link. Yeah, I see what you're saying. But I do think if they were all searching the exact same words, I think especially for MyPlate, the USDA website, I think that would come up first. But I do see what you're saying. Google does use preferences based on, you know, cookies and other things. So yeah, I think maybe in that case, yeah, URLs are a mile long. If you go to the website Tiny URL, Andy, you can put a URL in there and it will make it shorter for you. That's a very useful tool, especially like if we're trying to do digital literacy in our classrooms. Go to Tiny URL, put in whatever URL you have, and it'll make it short so that you can just write it on the board and it's easier for them to copy in with few errors. Good, I'm glad it could help. Yeah, Remind is a great app. I know a lot of my colleagues use. It's a way for everyone to connect and to send out announcements and stuff like that without sharing everyone's phone number. So if you do have privacy concerns, I would recommend Remind. That's a way that you can message and contact your students without having to share phone numbers. And Google Classroom, I think, also is really useful for that because they only need their email address and they don't have to share it with other students. So if you need somewhere to kind of send out announcements and communicate with students, Remind or Google Classroom would be good options. I believe that, yes, Quizlet and Remind are both. Okay, yeah, thanks, Dana. Yeah, I think those are both Apple and Android. Yeah, this is so great. I mean, I love getting teachers together to talk about this stuff because I know we're all kind of using different things and we all have different questions. So any tools that you're using, please just throw them into the chat box so that everyone else can benefit from them.
Okay, are there any more questions? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, Rachel, very much for your presentation. Everyone, I just wanted to remind you to please respond to our survey. I've entered the link again. Also, I want to put a plug in for our MCAEL Professional Development Conference coming up on Saturday, March the 7th. It'll be at the Montgomery College Germantown campus from 12 to 4:30. You can register on our website. Thank you, everyone. This will be recorded and will be available on our website in a few days.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.